I think they were also, in that regard, also very smart with how they spent their money.
So I have a question for you. Why do you think people still really hold on to this movie? 3 reasons why people might still really love this movie.
One, I think the influencer that we've already talked about, that pretty much since then, a lot of vampire movies, you can find somehow that they've been inspired by the Lost Boys. Whether it's young, they're sexy looking, they've got that rock and roll
Twilight
party lifestyle. Yeah, and then you got the Twilight stuff. 2, I think how creative it is, especially with the camera work and the use of music in this movie. And then I'm going to go 3 for me anyways, of how reserved everything is in this movie up until the final maybe 20 minutes.
Yeah.
When it just literally, for lack of a better term, goes batshit crazy.
And Grandpa saves the day. Old Gramps.
Hughes.
He's known about them for years. And then they had a post-credit scene that was taken out where Max had been around for a long time. So
yeah,
the grandpa, the entire time he's setting up stakes in the background in this movie. He's just ready. He knows what's going on, doesn't he? He
knows what's going on, but he's not telling any of his family, which I find kind of maddening too. Yeah, so, Grandpa, you've known about this. Even the last line of the movie is you confessing to hating all the vampires, but yet you didn't really help anyone until you showed up and drove your vehicle through the front door of your own house and killed Max.
And could have killed everyone in the house with those stakes, but they nailed Max perfectly. Maybe he's just so good at it now. I do love that scene. I love in the background when he's making stakes and putting it into the ground. And he has his entire... I want his subplot in a movie, just the way he's dealing with it. Oh, I love it. But what do you think about... So I read an article where they talk about how this kind of messes with... It's hinges on repudiations and reversals of the nuclear family structure, with perhaps the best example coming from the character of Max, tall and bookish. He's Lucy's love interest, favorably observing throughout the film that Lucy has a generous nature and is a protecting mother. But he's just looking for a nuclear family? But you have a single mom who moved away and she's hustling for work. But then you have a guy that just wants to have a normal family with his boys.
I don't know. I think there's something to it. I mean, I know this movie was also inspired from Peter Pan and Peter Pan's Lost Boys. Mm-hmm. And it's all about, Peter bringing Wendy to Neverland and living with them and all this stuff. So I think, I don't know if it's necessarily, Diane West's character Lucy that he's trying, I guess he's trying to bring in for that motherly role, but it's like it's also kind of joined by Star as well.
Yeah.
It really is a weird family dynamic that's going on. But then again, who am I to question what vampires are going to do with their family dynamics?
And then Star is a half vampire.
Yes, and so is Laddie.
Yeah. Man, Jami Gertz.
Love Jami Gertz.
She's the owner of the part. She and her husband own the Atlanta Hawks.
I know.
Isn't that crazy?
Talk about doing well.
No, but I guess. But then she brings in Michael. The smoldering Michael, because she likes him. But what did she expect from this? She probably wanted him to be turned, right?
So I read some interesting things on fandom from this, and they must have had some psychologist writing up this whole character review of Star. And I think part of this is also revealed, part of her background is also revealed in the novelization, which I really want to read and try to get my hands on. But apparently she's a runaway. Oh. And so her father had, I don't know if her father abused her or was doing something, and then her mother tried to kill her. And so then she just took off and left and wound up in Santa Carla and got brought into this vampire gang with David and his boys. And I think part of that is her genuinely being interested in Michael, but also trying to escape that lifestyle that she's now stuck in.
Oh, find an out, and then he's the one that can
trying
help.
To find an out. And then I think part of it, she's interested in him, and then I think you have this weird thing going on where David originally wants her to kill Michael and to be her first kill, which then in turn would turn her into a full-blown vampire. But then I think she falls for him, and David ends up seeing Michael as somebody that he can recruit And so then they go through that whole crazy initiation phase.
Got it. And so the plan goes a little awry.
Yes, I would say so.
Man. So I just read something. I have so many. The problem with this movie is there's too many notes. But Schumacher said that he wanted to direct this because he just read about vampires being young and sexy. Like that's kind of what he based this movie around, right?
It's such a simplistic take, and now 30 years later, people are still like dissecting it for information. It's nuts.
I mean, I guess it's smart though, like just the way he tackled it, because it is quite subversive, this movie. But then it also, man, you can see. You're right. You can see the DNA of this in a lot of different movies. And I gotta tell you, I love the Frog Brothers in this. They're violent little guys. They murder a vampire. They go into a vampire lair, and that steak goes through Alex Winter really easily.
Yeah, I was gonna say. I mean, they almost went right. You know, the whole steak almost went right through him, including the arm. Like that was a heck of a spear by Corey Feldman.
Now imagine you and I were 15 years old, right? We're the Frog Brothers. We live in this town. We know there are vampires. We know the comic books. I mean, the town that they film in was the murder capital of the world because of the serial killers that were there, that were preying on the people that... It was a town where people went, like homeless kids, runaways. So there's a big commuter population there. So if someone went missing, you probably wouldn't know. So the serial killers were preying on that. So they played with that aspect with these vampires. But we're 15 years old, and we're killers. But you and I just go into the vampire's cave in the morning and just kill one? Like, that's... The Frog Brothers are...
Whew. They've got some big you-know-whats. I mean, they're brave. I don't know. It's really interesting because they do have times where
they're hugging each
incredibly
other.
Scared.
Yeah.
It's like, I think when they kill Paul in the bathtub at the end, like they're freaking out. But then, yeah, earlier in the movie, I guess 10 minutes before, they just strut right into that cave ready to kill everybody. But I also think that's part of their arrogance, is they don't know what to expect outside of what they have read in the comic books.
It messed with us. He looked at us and talked to us. And that messed with our plans.
Yes. Blame it on a guy reacting to getting stabbed in the heart.
Oh, man, that was a lot of blood, too. But I guess I do like how this is another thing I miss about movies of the 80s. So you have The Goonies. You have Stand By Me. You have this, where there are characters, teenagers, who kind of exist in their own world. I mean, 80s parents were notoriously terrible in movies. So they're not around, so kids can go on adventures. And like Batteries Not Included. There were a lot more kids going on adventure movies back in the day. And this one, I guess, is... Man, you're 14, 15 watching this movie, and you see these Frog Brothers going in and killing vampires. You're going to relate to these guys. You're going to, because it's new. Like, you have these foul-mouthed vampire killers that are in way over their heads, but they still get the job done. And I guess I kind of like that about them. And then you have Nanook wiping people. Nanook saved the day.
Yeah,
Paul
she did.
What do you think
What do
you think about the death of Dwayne? He gets the arrow, then death by
He's
stereo.
The one, death by stereo. I don't. I love all the deaths in the movie, and I think that's part of it. Is that Edgar, Corey Feldman's character, also mentions that no vampire goes out the same way. Some of them explode, some of them implode,
Yeah.
some of them burn up, and some go quietly. Which I think he ends up getting all of those pretty much spot on. So Dwayne's is pretty funny, just for the fact that Corey Haim's Sam hits him somewhere with the first arrow and he drops, and then he stands up and he's like, "You missed, sucker." And it's like you get that awful 80s dialogue where saying that he missed the shot, and then Haim says something to the effect of like, "Not this time," and then shoots him and drives him into a stereo that catches him on fire and blows his arms off. It's really over the top. Very, very over the top.
Oh, so you have in this movie, there's 4 main vampires in their crew. And the kids do most of the killing in this. So you have Alex Winter, Marco being staked. Then you have Paul being killed by the Frog Brothers and Nanook. Then you have Sam killing Dwayne. David gets impaled in antlers by Michael. But it's kind of neat how it's the kids saving the day in this movie. The kids getting the kills. So, I mean, this is an R-rated movie, but I also think it played pretty heavy with the teenage crowd or younger crowd. Because you could, you're a comic book loving kid. You see this movie and you're like, man, like this is one of the first movies that made comic book kids kind of cool.
Kind of cool. Yeah.
I know that they had to, so Schumacher told Corey Feldman to butch up his performance, so he watched Clint Eastwood and Chuck Norris and Stallone movies. But I love just their voice. We're tough. But they're funny, too. But I like that he told him to butch it up. It's, I don't know. It's just another reason why I guess the movie's still popular today. And they're still doing panels. Did you see on YouTube? They have big panels that they do together. And there'll be like 1,000 people sitting there listening to them talk.
Well, and I think every year, where was this shot at? The Santa Cruz Boardwalk. Every year they do like a big Lost Boys festival where a lot of these guys and actors, cast members, musicians will come back and perform and talk at this giant festival that they do.
Go watch Tim Capello play?
Oh, I would.
Oh, man.
I'd do it.
But so this movie, too, it has such a simplistic plot. It's really, I like that it doesn't get convoluted. You have a single mom and her 2 kids moving into town with her father. The kid, Michael, immediately meets Star. He immediately gets in with this group. He almost immediately becomes a vampire. His brother suspects something. He teams up with 2 guys he finds at a comic shop, and then it all just ends at the end. It's such a simple, non-dragged into the muck narrative.
It is, and for the most part, it's all driven forward by the characters and the unique situations they find themselves in.
Yeah, the train sequence where they fall.
Oh, yeah, the whole initiation thing, I think, is fascinating, too.
What was the fog budget on this movie?
Oh, man, it had to be a lot, especially that mountain. So it starts off with the dirt bike race to the cliff edge. A lot of fog there. Then they go back. I think there's a little fog in the collapsed hotel, which is an absolutely incredible set piece, by the way.
The cavernous set.
Yes, the Lost Boys' home or lair is a hotel from 1906 that collapsed into the ground following an earthquake.
With Jim Morrison on the wall.
Yes. Which I think it also it makes me wonder what the age of the Lost Boys is as well. Like, we know they're stuck around 17, 18 years old, but when were they originally transformed? Just makes me wonder if it is kind of that mid to late 60s period, especially with Jim Morrison poster.
Yeah.
Like, if that would have been big during the time that they turned, or if they just like all that retro stuff.
Take a guess. When do you think they turned?
Man, I
don't think they're very good at it yet.
Says.
Does that make sense? Do you think they're good at it?
Because I don't know.
They sleep unprotected. They don't have a familiar protecting them when they sleep.
And they don't have a guard dog like Max's Thorn. But he's also been around since the 1900s.
Yeah.
Early 1900s.
Maybe
so
they're overconfident teenagers still. Right?
I think they're overconfident.
Yeah, they don't think that the Frog Brothers are going to come in there and just stab them in the chest.
Because they kill a lot of people early on in that movie.
The punks, the security guard. With the cheap camera trick, they couldn't afford stuff, so they just had a camera in the air. Yeah, and then the couple making out in the car. Oh, they ripped the top off.
They ripped the top off, and the guy's reading one of the comics he stole from the Frog Brothers.
Oh, never steal
comics.
And
then they kill the whole rival biker gang. I mean, they destroy them.
Yeah, wipe them off the...
Gosh, and that is such a brutal scene, too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's bad.
I remember watching that for the first time and just thinking, like, oh my God, this is horrifying.
The sense of helplessness, too, as the camera closes in on you. Yeah. It's almost Evil Dead-esque, but not as Sam Raimi-y. It's more of like a stock floaty thing coming towards you.
So it's really interesting, now that we're talking about that, the camera work of this movie, especially like with that initiation scene where David's telling Michael that they're all murderers and they have to feed to live, I guess, or to continue to survive. But it's like all that camera work has just been building up, and it just kind of comes to a header right there during that massacre, that rave massacre. So it's like you get, as you mentioned, all these camera tricks of the flying, like the camera POV flying through the air. So I guess it's a POV of the vampires as they're moving. And so for the first, hour plus of the movie, we never actually see one of the vampires flying in the air, or like what they're capable of. Everything